record. Okay, so it's recording now. We'll wait till I think 2 or 2 past 1, and then we can get started. I think we'll wait for 1 more minute and then get started.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I think we can get started. So yeah, welcome everyone to this one group session. Firstly, thanks to all of you who registered for the session and found out time on a weekend to attend this session. We really hope that we'll be able to add a lot of value to your one journey moving forward. One request, if you are not talking, if you can mute yourself, that will be really appreciated. And if you don't mind, I think maybe if you can turn on your video, I think that will be more engaging, because one thing that me and Aakash discussed, when we were thinking of this session, was that we really want to make this more conversational, right? I think enough of going through a bunch of boring slides. Even I think the same reason why even ChatGPT became so famous, right? Because it's conversational, you can talk with it. So yeah, I think that's really the idea. So if you don't mind,
and commercial,
appreciate if you can turn on your video. But cool. So I think with that we'll get started. So we don't have really defined agenda or anything, but there are a couple of things that we thought we'd like to discuss today. So we'll start with quickly introducing myself and Aakash. I will then quickly run through, like a very high level understanding of what a one visa is about. Then we'll into the main part, which is, really going to all the different criteria for O1, and not only that, but also discussing which are the criteria that worked for me, which are the criteria that worked for Aakash, what kind of evidences we provided for these different criteria. Then we'll talk about some common challenges that me and Aakash, we have been speaking with a lot of people of late who are trying to be eligible, build their profile for O1, but we have both seen some very common challenges which people are not aware of or they have a wrong notion about. So we really want to clear some of those challenges. And finally, I know we'll open up the floor for live questions and answers. So if you have any questions, it can be the most simple question, doesn't matter. Please unmute yourself and let us know if you have any queries, and me and Aakash will try our best to answer. Okay, so with that, so let's start off with the introduction. So I'll go fast maybe. So my name is Rudra. I'm currently a product manager at QB, and at QB, my work mainly focuses on building AI and automation products to scale QB's content management, ad operations, and sales products. Previously, I had worked in Siemens Healthineers as R&D engineer, and then I was also involved in the consulting space for 1 year before I moved to QB. I completed my master's in India from IIT Madras, and then I came to US for my second master's in engineering management from Cornell University. And outside my day job, I also do PM mentoring, speaking, and some of the other engagements. So that's briefly who I am. So Aakash, I'll give it up to you. Maybe you can quickly introduce yourself before we jump to the next section.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rudra. Hey, everyone. My name is Aakash. I am currently a senior product manager at Zoom, focusing on enterprise and financial services customers, where it's mostly dealing with security, privacy, and compliance of Zoom and how it's used within large organizations. I've been here for 2 years now. Before that, I spent 1 year as a software engineer at PayPal and did a career switch. And I came to the US almost exactly 5 years ago for my master's at San Jose State. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so then let's jump to the next section, which is so I'll give you a high level definition of what a one visa is about. I'm definitely not going to read through the boring definition that's available on the USCIS website. You can always go back and see that. But just to give you an understanding, so one visa is basically a talent visa, unlike a H-1B or a F-1 or a L-1 visa. So it's a talent visa, which is given to individuals who have extraordinary skills or abilities in a certain field. That can mean engineering, that can mean business, that can mean technology as well. There are some other fields as well, but like art and culture, but I'm not speaking on that, mostly assuming that all the folks out here in this call today are mostly probably from the technology or the business background. So that's what a one visa is. And then there are 8 different criteria for the one visa. And if you go to the website, you'll see it's written you need to meet 3 out of those 8 criteria. But realistically speaking, and this is something that both me and Aakash have gone through, you talk with any lawyer, they will say that you need to meet somewhere around 5 out of those 8 criteria at least, right, to build a strong case. So even though on pen and paper it's written as 3, if you really want to build a solid case and ensure that there's no chance of getting RFE or a rejection, then it's always advisable that you try to meet at least around 5 criteria. So that's what a one visa is. Before I get into the criteria details, one more thing is that so advantage of a one visa is that it's literally renewable for your entire life, right? Of course, you will not do that. I mean, you will try to get into a permanent residence and all those things. But then technically one visa is something that you can keep on renewing after 3 years, for every single time period. So that's a good thing about one visa. And then there's also a ability on a one visa where you can technically work for multiple employers, right? There is a process to that. It's not like, as simple as, let's say today I'm working for Tubi and then tomorrow I join another company. It's not like a straightforward way, but you basically can work with the agency, and through the agency, you can be employed by multiple companies. I think it's more sort of like people who might be interested to work in consulting roles. I think it can be something very, very suitable for them to be working with multiple employers. So yeah, so I think at a high level, that's what a one visa is. And now we'll jump into the details of like what are the 8 criteria for a one visa, and then me and Akash will talk through, which are the criteria that we were able to check off, and what are some like some of the evidences that we provided for each of these criteria. So maybe I'll just share my screen here. I think that will be easy for people to see. Okay, so I think it's visible. Cool. So what you see in this column is basically the 8 criteria for one. Now the first one says, and this is really not in any particular order. In total, these are the 8 criteria. So the first one here says that if the applicant has received a national or international award. Now, I did not check out for this criteria, and I can see Aakash also did not check out for this criteria. So I'll give you my understanding, and Aakash, if there's anything else you want to add, please feel free to chime in. So what I understood by talking with my lawyers is that all of us probably has received some award or the other at some point in our career, right? But here, what they're really meaning by award is something that's like globally renowned, right? So if I have to give you an example, let's say, for example, you get, I think it's for, like, pardon me if I'm wrong, but I think, for example, for doing something in mathematics, you get this prize called the Pulitzer Prize, right? Or prizes like that, right? Which are like globally renowned. I mean, you'll usually be able to get those prizes if you have spent like, 20, 25 years doing work in a particular field, right? So I was pretty clear that, of course, that is not like something that I can achieve, and I didn't even try to do that. So some of the sample examples which people think that they might be able to supply here as evidence but will not work, for example, fellowships or scholarships. Those are like good awards in general, but those are not the kind of awards that will fit in for this particular one criteria. Aakash, you want to add anything here?
Yeah, this is one of the most toughest criteria to crack. It's essentially a Pulitzer, Oscar, a Nobel Prize. It's in the league of those awards. So if you can qualify for that, amazing. You probably don't need an O1 visa. I think you're doing pretty well. And the best part about this criteria is that if you have an award like a Nobel Prize or like a Pulitzer Prize, like Rudra mentioned, you can skip all of the other criterias. You are immediately approved for an O1. So that's one of the great parts. But again, national and international recognition award does not mean if your company has offices in multiple countries and you receive an award within a company, that's not international recognition. It's outside your company in the field that you are applying to be. So it's important to not waste time on a criteria which you might have a wrong perception of.
Absolutely. I think that was really great input, Akash. Okay, so moving on to the next criteria here. If you have a membership in a prestigious association, this again something that both of us did not qualify for. So this again kind of very tricky. Now, I've met a lot of people who have come back and said that, okay, I am the president of so and so organization, right? I'm the vice president, or I have some position in a certain organization. But here again, what they're actually meaning is that, so again, let me give you a sample example. So most of you might be already aware of organizations like the Royal Society of Chemistry, right? Or IEEE, right? And these are organizations where you cannot become a member just like that, right? So, and don't confuse these with being a student member, right? That's the totally different thing. Anybody can be a student member at any point of IEEE. But for a IEEE membership, for a formal IEEE membership, not only do you need to have several years of experience, like industry experience, but you must be someone who has been engaged with IEEE, whether that's through, contributing papers, articles with IEEE for a substantial period of time. And you also need like, I think 3 or 4 referral letters from other senior industry leaders who are already IEEE members. So, as you understand, it's a pretty complicated criteria to fulfill if you are early or in the middle layer of your career. So I think, yeah, that was the reason I did not, I clearly understood that this is not something that I want to try for. Akash, you have an
Yeah.
input?
Yeah, definitely. So, just some context. If someone wants to start a company in the US, O&A is one of the best ways to do it because you're not dependent on the H-1B lottery. And let's say you have a startup, you receive funding through Y Combinator, then technically you are a member of Y Combinator, which is like one of the most prestigious associations there is. But still, in some cases, USCIS rejects saying it's not prestigious enough. So again, it's extremely hard. Like Rudra mentioned, you have to be a IEEE senior member, like a distinguished member, which only happens through being years and years of contribution in some cases.
Heat, we will have the Q&A at the end. So if you can just save your question, yeah, we'll come back. No worries.
Yeah.
Cool. So moving on to the next criteria, which is judging work of others. So this is, I would say, more of a low-hanging fruit. You still have to figure out how exactly you can do this, but then I think this is something that's doable. So for me, this happened organically where I was approached by an organization who conducted this entrepreneurship competition, and they invited me to be a judge for them. So that's the evidence that I provided to fulfill this criteria. And Akash, it seems you did peer review for a journal. Yeah, so I think I'll be curious to know, how exactly did it happen for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote 2 research papers in my undergrad, and I was in touch with the professors with whom I collaborated on that. And like just an opportunity came up for a conference, and the paper I wrote is the field is similar to which what I work on right now. So I just asked them saying that, hey, is there anything upcoming, a peer review or something? It's just about honestly asking people. You can, if you get lucky and get an opportunity, amazing, don't let go of it. If you might think, even if it's small, but it's just asking people that, hey, can I review this with you? Most people might say no. If you get one yes, even that's amazing. So, and another important point is you will never know how many criteria you qualify for when you get an approval for an O1A. So you can see 6 categories here from both me and Rudra. We don't know. USCIS does not tell you which criteria you are approved for. That's one of the worst part of it. So I had one peer review, but I don't know if they use that as an acceptance factor, or did they just dismiss that evidence?
Yeah, I think there are 2 important points that you made there, Akash. So firstly, I think what Akash said, that reach out to people, right? It never harms, and you probably get like tons of rejections, which is fine. We all got that, but eventually, it's really that one opportunity that is needed, right? So reach out to people proactively. Don't wait for things to come to you. And then I think the last thing that Akash mentioned, that is really important. We have to keep in mind that this is all that based on our profile, our lawyers thought that can be provided as evidence, but we really don't know which one of these actually got picked up and which one USA rejected, right? It might be that they took 4 of these and rejected 2, right? But we don't have any scope to know that. So I think that's something that to keep in mind.
Yeah. And just last point on even your your work, Rudra, you said you judged an entrepreneurship competition, and the criteria states that judge the work of others. So it can be through anything. It can be you are a literal judge. Someone asks you for an opinion on something. As long as you have that documented, it's amazing. A peer review is technically you're judging someone's work or providing an opinion. It's as creatively as you extend it. It's not just direct and hard judging. You're on a panel, how you kind of see awards and
A
others.
typical judging, right? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a very good point to remember that, like there are several ways you can get this done. You have to just figure out that which method suits for you, right? So I think that's the takeaway here. Awesome. So moving on to the next criteria, which says that contributed highly significant original or scholarly work in this field. I think this is a little bit straightforward, I'd say. So for me, and this is kind of connected with the second last criteria you see, which is like authorship of publications. So for me, for the fourth criteria, like I had IEEE publications which were used as evidence of original work. Apart from that, I'd also been involved in a couple of other projects that had high impact. Um, so those, and these were not really like projects with from like connected with my company. So just to give you an example of what I'm trying to say, right? For example, I was a part of one of the global competitions organized by Google. And then even though we didn't win the competition, but there were, I think, around 3,000 teams, and my team came in the top 15. And it was like, it's not only just under competition, it was a big competition. It was, considering basically like space science and, sending something to the moon. It's basically space exploration kind of a competition. So that worked for me as evidence here. Apart from that, for example, I'd also worked with our industry. They are not like any of my formal employers, but it was an industry project where I worked on a Six Sigma problem, right? Basically trying to improve our existing process using Six Sigma principles, and that eventually helped me to be awarded with a Six Sigma black belt. So basically, like, any original projects that you have might have worked on doesn't have to be with your company, but yeah, any original contribution that you have might have done in terms of projects or any other work, that will work out here. And I think, Aakash, you had two patents that you provided here as evidence. I think patents are like, are like, I would say like a very, very strong evidence, probably stronger than what I have provided here. But I also think that patent is also really not something very easy to, achieve, right? I think it's really great, Aakash, that you were able to get two patents. But yeah, I mean, do you want to talk maybe briefly like how this worked out for you?
Yeah. And before that, I just want everyone to stress on one point that Rudra said, that it's not necessary that the original contribution has to be within your company. So if you're not getting those opportunities, you can look outside, and that can be fulfilled as a criteria. Just like Rudra mentioned, he was in a Google competition where he came top 15. So it's, don't kind of limit yourself. Oh, I don't have anything in my company. I don't have that scope. So what can I do? So yeah, just one thing. And yeah, on the patents, those I filed those when I was at Zoom in the last 2 years. So they were kind of recent, so to speak, but it kind of takes almost 1 year for them to process and then show up. And I mean, yeah, it's a great way to show original contribution. It's not that straightforward to file it. You kind of have to maybe convince your legal team, maybe bring your manager on board. But usually companies are open to filing patents because it increases their IP value. They get credits towards R&D. It's a win-win situation for everyone involved. Probably cost to file a patent is not borne by you, it's borne by the company. For them, it's extremely minimal. However, they won't file just everything that you pitch. You might pitch 10, they might reject 9, and you might be able to file 1. But filing that is a very strong criteria for O1, and it also just looks maybe good on your overall profile.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think one point that I'd like to mention here, and probably is something that we will talk later, Aakash, more in more details. But I think since we're talking about patent here, uh, like I think for both of us, we cannot emphasize enough how helpful like our relationships with our employer has been in getting one done. We just cannot emphasize enough. So like just since we're talking about patents here, I do know for a fact that patent is not something that, you just randomly go and tell your team that, okay, I want to file a patent. They will not file the patent, right? So which means that the work has to be of that standard. Not only you or your team, but the company has to agree unanimously that this is a work worthy of a patent, and only then it will happen, right? So I think we'll talk about this more later, but I just wanted to make this point here that uh, being able to build that trust or confidence in your team at your company, that is like very, very important in getting this entire process done relatively smoothly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And just one point through on the original contribution. Original contribution is definitely required, but you have to show its impact in some manner. So, like Rudra has mentioned, he has IEEE publications and other projects through that competition. Those can be quantified to an impact that, okay, I have published some original work which is being used somewhere, or I am in a competition and what we did has potential applications. Even in my case, I could show that the patent is currently being used in the industry, and not only at my company, but like with other companies or people in the field. So that is one important criteria. If you have maybe 10 patents, great, but if you cannot show its impact, they are only good just for you.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I don't know why I'm getting a lot of mails saying that they cannot enter into the meeting.
Let me check.
Sorry, guys, just give us 1 second. I just want to make sure that, yeah, actually, I've got quite a few mails here, Akash, saying that, but I don't know why did they get blocked, right? I mean, there are 100 people who joined here without getting blocked,
Yeah.
correct? So these guys are saying that they got blocked and they were waiting to be admitted to this meeting, but I don't know why should that option even come.
It shouldn't.
Guys, just give us 2 minutes. Akash, are you replying back?
Let me check. Hold on. Yeah. We can just quickly send the.
Yeah, I think we should have ideally had someone like an organizer or someone maybe just to moderate. It's difficult to talk here and then go back. Think
I'll just.
You can still, if you want, you can add one of us. We can just keep people admitting them. That's okay.
No, but I don't think there is a guard on this room, right?
that's it, yeah, that's exactly right. So many people joined. But yeah, maybe I'll just send the recording later anyway. So okay, let's continue here. So let me reshare my screen. Okay, awesome. So, okay, so moving on to the fifth criteria, which was if you had achievements published in major media announcements. So, let's say any media magazines or newspapers and things like that. So for me, it worked. So I just talked about the Google competition. And because it was a very large scale competition, actually, there's an article on me and my work that came out in Times of India. So that is what, and another regional newspaper. So that is what I used as evidence to fulfill this criteria. And Akash, it seems you had online blogs and articles talking about your work. So yeah, do you want to quickly talk on that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very you can argue this criteria anyhow. I think Rudra, in your case, it mentioned your name clearly on the
Yes,
article.
name, image, and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So in my case, it was mainly published about my work, and then I could tie that to myself through letters of recommendation, saying that I am the main person working on that. So again, this is how you clarify. You can, again, we don't know which one got selected, but again, this is how at least something is better than nothing. Honestly, like whatever evidence you have, just throw it over the wall and don't just self-reject. But yeah, in my case, it was mainly about my work. My name was not mentioned anywhere, and I could only tie it that through the publication that, okay, he was the main person working on this.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think it makes sense to, basically provide everything that you feel that can be used as evidence to your lawyer, because uh, like honestly, what I feel is that if it's something completely rubbish, even the lawyer will not pick it up as evidence, right? Because the eventual petition that will be documented, that will be done by the lawyer. So only if the lawyer feels that, there is some substance to it, even for example, even before I applied, right, I had to send my entire profile to the lawyer, and they did an analysis and told me that, okay, we think that it can work out, right? So only then they will proceed. Otherwise, they won't even proceed. So I think from your side, you just throw in whatever you have, and then it's up to the lawyer to decide whether it's good enough or not. Okay, so the next criteria says what if you are working in a critical role. So this is literally as simple as like letters from your companies or from other people who might have leveraged your work at some point in their career, and they can write letters for you. For my case, this specifically, these were LOAs that I obtained from my current company and my previous company in US. One thing to note, I don't know if this is like absolutely true or not, but my lawyers did specifically mention not to take any letters from my employer in India, right? I don't know if that's really has an impact or not, but that's what my lawyer said, to take letters from companies that I've worked in the US. And I think, Akash, for you didn't take any letters from your employer, but you had other people in this field who had used your work, right?
Yeah. So yeah, my lawyer gave me the opposite guidance, that don't take any letters from your current employer. It's like, okay, both tactics worked. We are here, so yeah,
Yeah.
get any letters that you can, but yeah, consult with your lawyer, because ultimately they are filing your petition. In
Yeah.
my case, I work with partners who build integrations on Zoom a lot in my current role. uh, so, and as long as you do a good work, maintain relationships with them, or even your current employer, you can get those letters to show you are in a critical role and you actually have concrete impact, everything should kind of tie it together, right? I mean, the online blogs are about my work, which the partners use. The patents were also something which the partners used, or even my company used in some capacity. So it ultimately depends on how you position it. In my case, I took 5 letters of recommendation. 3 were from various partners, and even within them, it's the higher someone's title, the better. If you get a letter from someone at a C level, nothing like it. But if you get it from a senior director or VP, that's equally good, because titles are varying in the impact across all companies. I got 3 from them, one from the professor whom I wrote my research papers with, and one letter was from our chief product officer who had retired a couple of months ago. So again, not my current employer, but technically, yes.
Correct. And I think one thing that I wanted to highlight here, Akash, because I feel that I do know a lot of lawyers ask for this, and like for me, it was the same case. So I had to provide in total 4 letters. So for me, uh, one was from a senior product manager, 2 were from senior directors, and so these 3 were basically from my current company and past company. And I also needed a 4th letter, which is called as an independent letter, which was from a senior director. And that letter was basically from someone who has no engagement with me at all in any capacity. And that's a very tricky thing. It's easy to say, But I know that's a very tricky thing because you're literally saying that I want someone to recommend me who doesn't even know that I exist, right? It's like that almost. And the reason they ask for that is because they say that, okay, it's assumed that, like kind of similar to the logic why his lawyer said probably that don't take any letters from your company. I think it's a similar logic where they're saying that, okay, it's expected or assumed that people from your company or past company, they will write great things about you. But is there someone who exists in the professional world who doesn't know you, who has not worked with you, who has no engagement, but in spite of that, because of the contribution that you have had in this field, that's how they know you, like, and they are still ready to give you the letter. So that's a pretty challenging thing. A quick advice would be that you can find someone like this basically through your primary contacts. So your primary contacts will be the people like whom assumably you know quite well, and then you can reach out to them and ask that, okay, I am willing to share my complete profile and even willing to speak with that person, but would you know someone who would be willing to do this, right? That's how it worked for me, and I believe that that's one of the straightforward way how you can get it done, because otherwise, of course, independently, if you just go and ask somebody that will you be recommending me, they will not, as simple as that. Okay, so I think that's critical role. Authorship, I think, is very straightforward, basically saying, have you written any publications, journals? I had 3 IEEE fast author papers. My total citations, however, was less than what Aakash has here. I think I had around 25 or 30 citations. And Aakash, it seems you had 1 IEEE paper and 1 book chapter and around 57 citations, fast
Yeah.
author both.
Yeah.
I think the important point that I want to highlight here is that being the fast author is important. Doesn't
Very.
matter if you have 2 papers or 4 papers, even 2 papers can be good enough. Doesn't matter if you really have a lot of high citations, but being the fast author is important. Yeah, Akash, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, the first author thing is very important. It helps with perception a lot. Just to give a small example, if someone cites your paper, the way they'll cite it is maybe they'll say your first name and et al., which means maybe, for example, Rudra and others. So if you have multiple authors on the paper, when you're submitting evidence, that plays a key role in perception. Okay, he was the leading person on this. And yeah, scholarly publication, it's very straightforward. Research paper or a book chapter, which is again, it's almost like an extended research paper. And you also have to show some sort of maybe impact if possible. It will only strengthen your case that, okay, someone cited my research paper who was in an important capacity. It's all about that. You can publish 10 research papers in journals which are not well known in your school, college, but if they at like if you have single digit citations overall, or your paper is not cited somewhere well, it might be a tough criteria to qualify for. It's again all about the impact that your work has.
Exactly. Awesome. And then quickly summing up with the last criteria here, which is high salary. I think this is like the most straightforward. You really don't have anything to do here because so I'll just say how it's calculated. So they'll basically take your base salary. This is an important point to note because I know a lot of people have asked me that, okay, can I add my stocks and all those other things which are usually there in the package? Those things will not be considered for this calculation. So they will consider your base salary in your field for your designation. They will see that where does base salary lies, for all the other people having that similar role and getting salaries in the US. And then if your base salary comes in the top 10%, then you straight away qualify for this. If your base salary doesn't come in the top 10%, you don't qualify. So I think it's a very simple thing. You really don't have anything to do. It's like just depending on your salary, you qualify or you don't qualify.
Yeah. Yeah. Even in my case, I just submitted my pay stubs and what are like documents for like salary documents to the lawyers, and just never thought about that again. And again, we don't know if we got qualified for that. So we don't know if we make a comparably high salary.
Yeah. Awesome. I think so. hopefully we were able to give you some at least high level idea around the different criteria and what kind of documents we provided as evidence for all of this criteria. So now we'll move on to the next segment, which was basically talking about some of the challenges. And I felt that it's important to talk about the common challenges, because I see, and I'm sure Aakash, we have also come across a lot of similar questions where we have seen people like either they have some wrong notion, or they do not exactly know how to approach or go about this one visa. So I think maybe I can start with a couple that I have noticed, and Akash, then you can chime in. So I think one common challenge that I've found in a lot of people who are willing to apply for O1 visa, or at least who want to apply for O1 visa, is that they are thinking about O1 visa as the last option, right? And they think that this is something that can be done very quickly overnight if all other visa options are exhausted, which is absolutely not the case. As you can, understand probably based on our prior discussion here, that there is going to be a lot of effort that has to be put in outside your 9 to 5 job, right? Of course, you will get some of the things done through your 9 to 5 job, but there will be a lot of things that you'll need to do outside that, which will help you to qualify for this visa. So this is not something, that you think that, okay, let me see if my H1B is getting exhausted, or, if my L1 is getting exhausted, and only then I start thinking about one visa. It will not happen that way, right? So I just say that, be proactive. If you really want to qualify for this visa, start your preparation early. And I think that will really help. The other common challenge that I have found is that I'm not sure if there are a lot of people in this call, but I know I did see that there are people who are currently based in India who are registered for this call. So this is specifically for them. If you are trying to directly relocate from India to US, directly on a work opportunity, one visa is probably not the right visa for you, because as you can understand, so one thing is to remember, you cannot self-petition one visa, which means that your company has to take that lead, right? Independent of whether your company's immigration team can support you or not, that's a second layer of discussion. That's a different thing. But independent of that, your company still has to be taking the lead, because the petition that will be generated by the lawyers, your company has to approve that before that can be sent to USCIS, right? So if you are planning to relocate from India to US, or as a matter of fact, from any other third country to US on work opportunities, I would say that you should probably still go for a H1B or a L1, because those are the more typical visas based on which companies are willing to bring people here. This, as you understand, is more of a very niche category visa. It's a very, I don't know what to use, but it's a very very tailor-made and a very specific visa based on a lot of criteria. So US is not really willing to bring people from a third country, by sponsoring him for this visa and whatnot. So yeah, I think these are the two common misconceptions that I have seen. Akash, is there anything else that you might have come across?
Yes, one of the biggest one is that you will think that, oh, I will not qualify for this visa even after this session. But if you really want like an O1A visa, if you just go through the USCIS website, spend like 1 hour just seeing what evidences that they have, how cases are approved and denied, you will even get more confidence within your profile. Even the criteria that you see here, what me and Rudra have listed, they match up for an approval, but it's a spectrum of approval. You just need minimum 3, and like of course like your lawyers would say 4 and 5, but to USCIS they say 4 or 5 because you don't know you will get 3 out of 3. So it's better to buffer and kind of add a padding to your profile, so to speak. And one more thing, like Rudra mentioned, that you have to prepare for this visa. uh, I will definitely agree to that, but in a different way. I did not proactively work towards my own visa ever. And I only looked at it as an option when my H1B wasn't picked in my third lottery this March. And I had only 2.5 months to go to Amsterdam. Zoom was sending me there to work, and then I would come back on an L1 visa. So everything that I submitted was within 2 months, and the only thing I got then were the letters of recommendation. But it's like, if you are doing a good job, if you really like what you do, then you already have maximized your chances of getting an O1A visa. You have to basically do a good job, basically at your 9 to 5, to get your company's support, because it's a work visa at the end of the day. So you have to get their support, and to get all the other evidences, you have to be proactive, just ask more people. So because, and the achievements can be a bit farther out, right? Because the research paper and book chapter I had were from 2019, the patents were from 2021, the articles and blogs were from 2021 and 2022. So there wasn't anything in 2023 except the letters that I did. So it's, if you just if you just do good work consistently, then O1A will be a cakewalk for you. Even I think, Rudra, you mentioned the mentions in the news that was in India, or you did some things during your undergrad, master. So it's like a consistent achievement. So yeah, don't stress yourself that, oh, I'll do it in the next 2 3 years. You just have to get that momentum going, and then it'll be approved.
Yeah, I think just to sum that up, Akash, I think like one key thing to highlight here, basically I'd say, like, the intersection of what I said and now what you said, right? I think one thing you should note that even though Akash, started looking to one visa after his H1B didn't get picked up, and he had everything done in 2 3 months, the key thing you have to understand is that there's a lot that already had happened by that time in the background, right? That's a very key point, and it's a similar thing for me as well, right? I mean, after I decided that I want to apply for the one visa, I just did one thing of this entire list that you are seeing. Everything else I already had done. So I don't want to say that if you haven't published anything already, your career is useless, or if you don't have any recognition in the newspaper, you haven't done anything. I don't want to say that, but I think what I'm trying to highlight here is that you can get the stuff done in 2 3 months only if all these things or things similar to these have happened over a period of time till now, right? If you are thinking that if none of these things are there, for example, I like, just if you think realistically, is not going to be a standard where you can say that, okay, everybody working in the industry for 2 years will have a book chapter written, right? Of course, that's not the standard expectation, right? So yeah, but that's what I want, all of you to keep in mind, that if you have been, doing these things consistently, irrespective of one visa and all these things, you can wrap things up in 2 3 months. But that's the main point. If you because same for me, like Akash said, like the publications, the media recognition, all those things have happened way back in 2017, 2018, when I was in India, right? So I think for both of us, we just had things ready, mostly in our profile, and there's just a couple of small things we had to take care of. That is the reason why, things worked out very smoothly and in a shorter span of time. But yeah, I just thought that that's the important point to keep in mind. I mean, so that you are not under the wrong notion that, if none of this exists in my profile, I can still get one done in 2 months. That will definitely not happen. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Awesome. So I think that's pretty much the challenges we want to talk about. So now I think it's 15 minutes are left. So I think we are kind of being good on time. So I will stop sharing my screen here. I know there's a bunch of questions that have come in the chat, but I really request, if you don't mind, if you can unmute yourself and then, ask your question. I think that will be really helpful for us to answer.
Yeah. Rudra, and also, how about we take questions from people till the top of the hour, and then go through the chat questions one by one, if you can stay for some time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can. Okay, cool. So I think, yeah, Heat has been raising his hands for a long time. So maybe I'll go faster. Yes, Heat, go ahead.
Hey, Akash. Hey, Rudra. Thanks a lot for, first of all, taking this session. This was really, really informative, and I picked up a lot of points. I am pretty sure everyone else picked up a lot of points as well. So the question I have is regarding the field in O1 that we end up selecting. So what I'm thinking of, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people on this call are thinking of, is like, okay, entrepreneurship as one of their career options, and O1 is one of the routes to do that. But a lot of people like myself do not know, like, okay, what is the field or what is the exact thing that we want to be doing. So does it make sense to just go ahead and do the O1 visa right now, get it, and then whenever we figure it out, like, okay, what do we want to do exactly, we do it at that point in time.
Akash, you want to take that?
Yeah, that's a very contradicting question, Heath, because even to get the O1A visa, you have to have extreme clarity on what the field is and provide evidence like that. And since it's a work visa, if you get O1, you kind of have to work in the same field. So let's say you get your O1 approved for a startup, I don't know, selling accounting software in the US, you move here, you can only grow that business because it's ultimately tied to your company. You can't come here and then figure out what you want to do. However, if you're a founder, there is like you can only focus on design if you like, but you cannot have O1 without the clarity of the impact or the clarity of your field.
I think Heat, just to be very honest, I feel that probably both me and Akash are not like really qualified to exactly tell you what the answer should be for this one, just because we haven't pursued this area of entrepreneurship ourselves. But I do know that if you go to LinkedIn, you will find a bunch of people who are doing this. Like they have their own companies now and they are on a one visa. So I will suggest that, probably go and talk with them, because I feel they will be really able to give you like more actionable inputs as to how you should proceed from here.
Yeah. And if you have raised money or through an accelerator, they will have an army of lawyers to guide you through this entire process. So that's the best resource anyone can have for the O1 visa, honestly.
Cool. So I'll
Thank you.
move on to the next one. Prithib, you have a question?
Oh, hey, thank you for doing this. I have three questions. You can tell me if I just have to stick with one. I'll be very quick with them.
I think,
Yeah.
I think
So the
we'll
first,
one for now, and the remaining two you can get in touch with us offline. We'll try to answer, because I know there are a lot of people who also has questions. So I just want to give an opportunity to as many people as we can. So yeah, you can go ahead with your
Okay.
first. Yeah.
Okay, works. Makes sense. Thanks. So I've heard that any work that was done when you were a student, right, essentially will be discounted. For example, I did judge a student-based competition through my workplace. I judged, it was 3 months ago. I judged a bunch of college, high school students on their work. It was related to tech, and then I won uh, design by an award by Apple when I was in like undergrad. I can't use these qualifications, right? It has to be like in a professional setting.
So I can tell you like what feedback I had got on this from my lawyer. So the Apple competition definitely is not something that can be used here as evidence, because we already talked like, what exactly they mean by award for one. And I think that, so when you said you have judged this competition, so at that time point, you were a student or were you a professional?
This was when I was working, right?
Working, right? I think this should be something still workable. I mean, the only feedback that I got from my lawyer in this space was that he said that if you were a student and then you like did judging or something, that cannot be counted in. But if you are already an industry professional and it was at that time point when you did a judging or something, that should still be working well. I think one another point that's important to account here is probably that the competition that you judged, like what impact will that probably have, like in the field of your expertise, right? I think that is something that's important. So if your lawyer is able to make that connect, I think then it should work. But yeah, I think that's all I can say right now.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome. Okay, I think Utkarsh, you're in the next line.
Yeah, hi Rudra, hi Aakash, thanks. I was just wondering, you mentioned about research projects, and kind of, you also mentioned that we don't have to necessarily rely on our 9 to 5. We can go out and pursue opportunities. So I was just wondering, would you have any tips on how we can do that, where we can find research, and especially on the first authorship thing? So do we just start our own research project? How do we exactly get first authorship if we do pursue opportunities outside? So
Yeah, so you can definitely, like, if you're talking about having like research like publications, you can always, like, work on your own research problem and write a paper on that. And assuming it's a like decent enough paper, it will be published in some conferences or journals. Apart from conference and journals, there are also other platforms. At least I know, for like people who are working in product management and business roles, we do have some like really renowned platforms which are not typically conferences or journals, but they are equally renowned. So if you have something published in those platforms, like people will count that as something really good. So that's all I can say about like writing your own research paper. And I think for projects, the simple example that comes to my mind right now, and I've seen this a lot, especially during COVID, where I saw a bunch of companies on LinkedIn were basically offering these volunteering roles, right? Probably they were, let's say, building some medical products or something like that that can tackle COVID, and they didn't have the option probably to pay you, but they were basically inviting applicants, as volunteers, right? So I think considering the goal here is to get that experience in your profile and not really care so much about whether you are getting paid or not. I think opportunities like this, if you get, it makes total sense to keep the monetary part aside and go ahead and do the work, because I do feel that will help you to build a profile if you are looking to build your skills or build your own profile outside your 9 to 5 job. I think that's one way to go about it.
okay, thank you.
Awesome. Simar.
Hi, thank you so much for this session. This was incredibly helpful. I just had one question. I mean, I had a couple of them, but I'll just stick to one for now. For the last point about making a comparably high salary, and you mentioned, like both of you mentioned, top 10%. So, I mean, I guess I will be speaking from my personal experience. If you're joining like a consulting firm, and like what is your relative landscape for comparison, like who are the people you compare with, because consultants have a wide range of salaries, like you get paid from $1 million to like just 100,000 to start with, just so what's like that landscape?
So yeah, as far as I know, so basically, let's say your designation is consultant, right? So what the lawyers would do is basically, like, across US, they will look for like all the different, like the base pays that consultants get. Now, I'm not exactly sure on this part, like whether they really do this specific to the field. I think that should practically be the case, but at least how my lawyers did, like they looked at product manager salaries across domains, right? So it didn't mean that if I'm working for a streaming company, they will look for product management salaries only within the streaming domain. That's not how it happened for me, at least what I know. So to answer this question, I think they will look for consultant salaries across the board. With that can be a healthcare industry, that can be a tech industry, that can be a I don't know, like let's say civil engineering industry or whatever, and then they will like see that where your base salary comes into. That's what I know. Aakash, is there anything you want to add here?
Yeah, my lawyers told me it's for so my field, the field that I gave was security, privacy, and compliance. So they said, okay, we'll pitch it as, okay, you make X dollars as a PM in this field, and then you can take salaries according to that. So it's definitely not, oh, PM in the Bay Area. It's not PM in California. It's just PM in this field and how much you make.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think this is kind of gray again, because I still remember like exactly what is written in my petition. So there it says that product managers in US makes from here to here. This person's base pays here. Hence, it's clearly evident that he makes more than the average and comes in the top 10%, something like that. So yeah, it's pretty gray. But yeah, I think that's the base we can answer right now. So moving on to the next question, maybe Sunil.
Yeah, thanks. So my question is, you have talked about the criteria, but there is also final merit determination. So what was your arguments on that? Like, what are the things you highlighted for that part?
I'm not exactly sure on this. Akash, do you want to take this?
Yeah. So it's ultimately you don't have to provide anything extra for the final merits determination. And for people on the call who don't know what that is, if you satisfy 3 out of 8 criterias, you're approved. You pass the first step for an O1A, but the final merits determination is that does all of the evidence submitted for this person qualify them to be at the top in their field. So there isn't anything separate that you submit to show that, oh, you qualify for final merits, but it's just any like just the normal petition that you submit, and depending on all of the evidence that you have, it's important. That's why even Rudra mentioned that it's best to have 4 or 5, so that it kind of adds up to your overall evidence and provides a good perception about you and your overall profile.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Akash.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on. Yashashri.
Yeah, so actually Akash answered my one question. So for both of you, if you shed some light about like what's your next path after, like if now O1A is done. So now what about the perm and how that process actually looks like? Do you have any insight on that? As well as is it tied up with your employer or your current job, or you can switch job easily?
I think the next part is definitely green card. I think that's like the pretty obvious part going ahead from O1. Yeah, probably will not get a chance to talk a lot in details for this call, but I think that's the short answer. The next part is green card. And for your question of being tied with your employer, it's not that you cannot change your employer. It's just that your new employer has to again like file for the O1, and probably it will get approved considering it's again in the same space. But my personal understanding has been that, and because I've understood that your employer is so important for this kind of talent visas, whether it's the O1 or the green card or whatever it is. To be honest, I don't want to change my employer even, right? Until they lay me off or something happens like that, right? Because I just know that the amount of support that I've got from my current employer, and I think Akash will also agree with that. It's just difficult because you understand, right? The moment you are going to a new employer, you have to basically start building that confidence and trust from zero, right? It's a more difficult thing. So I think short answer is probably you don't want to even change your employer, once you are on one visa, and if your like long-term goal is like the green card.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, I know we are at time, so do you want to take one last question, Akash, or?
Yeah, I can stay for a while and just take
Okay.
question.
Okay, so I think we have 4 hands raised, and I'll just call out the names. So Mahi, Satish, Mukul, and Sagar. So we'll take these 4 questions. Okay. Mahi, do you want to go ahead?
Hey, yeah, thanks. Just a quick one. So how is this different from EB1A, and with O1A, is it like easier to get to the green card rather than being on H1B?
So O1 and EB1 is completely different. O1 is a working visa, EB1 is the green card. Because EB1 is the green card, of course, the evidences that you need to provide for EB1 has to be more stronger compared to what you provide for O1. If your profile is not ready for EB1, or if you think that there is significant amount of work needs to be done, to make your profile eligible for a EB1. I think O1 is a good intermediary step. And I think Aakash can speak more on this, but one of the main motivation for me to get into O1 was that I do know that once you are a O1 qualified, then the EB1 becomes relatively easier because the fundamental concept for both O1 and EB1 is same, where they're saying the US government is saying that, okay, this is a person with extraordinary skills in a certain field. So if you have already got a O1, it is a little difficult unless and until you submit some crap for your evidences for EB1. It's a little difficult for USCIS to reject because they are the ones who have already tagged you as a person of extraordinary ability maybe 1 or 2 years back. Does not mean that if you get the O1 that automatically fetches you the EB1. That will not happen. You will still have to work and build your profile further for EB1. But definitely your case becomes much more stronger if you are applying for EB1 as a O1 holder versus fresh applicant. That's the understanding I have. Aakash, is there anything else you want to add?
Oh, I think you summed it up perfectly. And another thing, O1 is a work visa, same as H1B or L1. So if you already are on H1B and have your I-140 approved, getting O1 will not make any difference to your profile. But if you're on L1, it will make a lot of difference because L1 renewals are extremely tricky, or I think they don't even exist. Or if you are on F1 STEM or F1 OPT and you have 3 chances for H1B, with that being crazier every growing year, O1 is something that you can look at. I think both me and Rudra, we went directly from F1 to O1. Both of us were not lucky enough to be picked in the H1B lottery ever.
I think another point, again, this is like just a personal realization. I can tell you that if you are someone motivated about your professional growth, and if you are preparing yourself for something like O1, I can assure you that you will take yourself like in the next level by doing that. And I'm saying this independent of the visa and all these things. I for example know how how drastically my my profile or whatever that is has changed since getting the O1, whether it's interacting with some of the industry leaders and things like that, right? So I definitely feel that if you are motivated just to grow in your career and make it like really count, I think that building a profile for the O1 visa, I think that will really help, because these papers, these all these other things we talked about, this is not just for the visa, right? I mean, it definitely pushes up your profile a lot. So I think it's a good thing. That is my personal realization. Okay, moving on, Satish.
Hey guys, thanks so much for doing this. I can't thank you guys enough. So I'll be quick about my questions. Number one, right now I'll be starting my coursework for as an F1 visa student in the coming spring. I looked at the slide and kind of looks like I qualify for 0 criterions. Given the fact that my program tenure is 1 year, and then I'll have 3 years to work in the US. In the 4 years, is it feasible enough for me to would you say it's realistic to even have hopes of building such a profile? I know it's super subjective, but any answer would do. And number two, could you shed some sort of light on what the cost associated with the O1 process was, and when I should time applying for this for the O1 visa? Should I try all my 3 attempts of H1B, and if it fails, then go about it?
Yeah.
I think number one answer would be it's more than feasible. 3 years is more than enough what you need to build your profile for a O1 visa. It's just that what will matter is that if you have a right plan, if you are willing to invest sufficient time and effort, like what we already discussed outside your 9 to 5 job, and if you are really motivated, right, doing it. If all of these things are true, then 3 years is more than enough to build your profile and get qualified for a O1 visa. The cost, I think, for both of us, luckily, it was our company immigration team who handled everything end to end. So we literally had to spend $0. But I can tell you, based on some of the other people I've talked with, and who are doing these through external lawyer, I think it will come somewhere around 9,000 to 10,000 USD. That's the average value I'm aware of. And the third question, I forgot, Akash, if you can take up, that'd be great.
Even I forgot. Can you repeat that, Satish?
I guess my question was like, when should one time applying for O1? Like,
Yeah.
should I complete my H1B?
So yeah, like definitely try for H1B every year if your company is sponsoring you, but build your profile on the side if you are being intentional about it 4 years out. Because you will get 4 chances for H1B, assuming one lottery per year. So if you get that, that's great. And even like you or someone on this call might think, oh, it's my second chance, I'll definitely get picked in the lottery, it's my last chance, there is no way I will not be picked in the lottery, because I went through the same thing. It's completely random every year. You can get picked the first time, or you can't get picked even after 8 times. I know people who are doing a third master's in the US and renewing and just being on F1 STEM OPT. So you can build your profile, give your best shot to avoid that agony later. But time it maybe 1 year before your last chance of H1B, or maybe 6 months before that. So you and the legal team can explore other options which are viable for you.
Yeah, I think the single word to sum that up is, just be proactive if you are planning to, get the one visa done. Okay. I think the next person is Mukul.
Hey Rudra, hey Akash, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate that. I've been working on my own profile for over a year now. So having this session was just a cherry on the cake. Thank you so much. My question here is, I actually worked on, a project with some of the professors back in my master's, and then eventually it got patented in collaboration with an industry, and then they are deploying that solution across their clients and saving money, creating jobs. So eventually impacting American economy. I don't have my name on that patent. Although the professors has said that they would be open to writing letters, I can also get letter from the company who actually patented the overall project and deploying it across the board. My question here is, will this count towards original contribution or supporting letters from the experts, or can be leveraged as both?
Both.
Akash, you want to take that?
Yeah, it will be qualified as both. Not having your name on the patent is a bit tricky, because the officer would think, oh, the professor is writing a letter saying that, oh, this person also worked, but why is their name not on the patent then? So it's good evidence, but not the strongest. So maybe also look for more pieces which can support your overall profile.
Okay, because they also paid NSF funds to me for that, like working on this project.
Yeah, that matters less. It matters what's the impact and how you can be directly tied to that impact.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it. All right. I have one more question, but I can talk about that later.
Okay. Yeah, if you can put it in the chat. I've already, I think, gone through all of the questions in chat. If you just put, I
Okay,
can answer it.
for sure. Thank you.
I think we have last two person here, Sagar and Niharika. So Sagar, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Sure. Yeah. Hi Akash. Hi Rudra. I'm Sagar. So I'm in my second years of masters, and I have two questions basically. The first is it always necessary to qualify for all the 6 criterias while applying for O1? Because I've seen like few people who have applied with like minimum 3 or something, which is the requirement, I guess, and have got. But I'm not sure. Like, is it always best to have some good things on like all 6 of them and qualify for them and provide evidence, or 3 would also suffice? First is this, and the second one is, so what I've heard from people who are working, that it is not us but our employer who decides to file what kind of visa they have to file for us, right? So is it possible for us to, like convince them or convey them that this is the ultimate thing to do, or like I'm on F1 right now, so I'll just like to directly convert into O1. Until then I can just build some good evidence on that. Is it possible for us to convey it to our employer, or does it happen just it is the ultimate decision maker is the employer?
Yeah,
I don't know. I
yeah,
would be glad to listen from you.
Yeah, we got your question. So I think the answer to the first question is already something we had already discussed. So 3 is the number of criteria mentioned on the website, but lawyers, if you're working with a lawyer, they will ask you to satisfy more than that. Like, both me and Aakash said that we also don't know how many of those 6 criteria actually got picked up. But we know that for sure is 3 or more than 3 out of 6 that got picked up. That's why we are here. But I can tell you that if you have just three criteria, like, checked off, lawyers will probably not agree to take your case. And I know we didn't get a chance here to talk about like the lawyer's part and all those things, but because I've been talking with a lot of people of late, I know how much of a pain it is to, to get a good lawyer who will be ready to take up your case. It's a next level challenge. I think both me and Aakash are very, very, very lucky in that aspect that, our companies were kind enough to take up our case and, do this proactively, providing all the support that could be possible for someone. Because I do know people who have profiles quite good, quite decent, but they are struggling just because they do not have any lawyer who is ready to take up your case. And there are multiple reasons why the external lawyers are mostly not ready to take up the case. Probably we don't have time to discuss all of that. But yeah, having a good, having a good lawyer is very important. So, but yeah, I mean, just being able to meet 3 criteria will not be sufficient for a lawyer to take up your case. And the second question that you had was basically, it's possible to convey, but again, it's coming back to your company. That's why I think we stressed on the fact that, try to build that level of confidence and trust with your employer, because at the end of the day, this is definitely not the standard process, right? So you'll have to make them really feel through your work, through what you achieve at work, that, I am someone who is worth of investing the time and effort from your end to get this thing done, right? So unless you're able to do that, it will be difficult to convince. And it's also not something dependent on like, company brand or anything. I'm not going to name anything here, but I know like some of the FANG companies, they don't support in this endeavor, right? They just say that no, H1B is the typical thing that we do for internationals, and that's what we'll do, right? It's unfortunate. Probably the general notion would be that, if I'm working in a FANG, then I am all covered up. It's absolutely not the case. So it doesn't depend on a big brand or a small brand or anything, but how much willing your company and your team and your manager is to support you in doing something like this, going out of their way of the standard process. That is what will decide. But I think from your side, all that you can do is basically make sure that you have the evidence to convince them. So, just like I think both of us talked about early, like build that trust, build that confidence in your team through your work. And I think then you will be definitely in a good position to discuss all these things.
Yeah.
Sure, Rudra.
Okay, I think
Thanks.
I'm not sure. Niharika, are you still on the call?
I think Charu has her hand up.
Yeah, so I think
last question we can take.
Charu is the last question. Okay, Charu.
Thank you for taking up my question. I just have like 2 questions, very simplified. That does the number of proofs in a certain category matter? For example, in media publications, do I need to have like multiple publications, or it's just like one strong publication or post is what is needed?
Yeah, as far as I know, and Aakash, you can chime in, but as far as I know, one publication will not be good enough. So probably like Aakash, could do with one publication because he already had like a book chapter written, right? So both of those basically went in as evidence for that criteria. So if
Okay.
you are just showing publication, I think one publication, unless and until it's something like, let's say you have a publication in Nature, for example, then that's a different thing. But otherwise, I think one publication might not be good enough. That's what my understanding is. Akash, do you want to chime in?
Yeah. Yes. If you just have one, it better be pretty significant. Yeah, like a TechCrunch interview or something in Wall Street Journal, Forbes, etc. But if not that, then multiple evidences are like a good point. It's ultimately as much as you can put out. Just the more the better. But don't crazy and wait for just okay, I'm never ready. You will know when you're ready, or maybe if you have a deadline, then you'll have to be ready.
Understand. Thank you. And just like Rudra, you mentioned one thing, that one of the recommendations you took was from one of the directors who was not directly related to your work. So can you just throw some light, like, for example, if there's some person who doesn't even know me, what sort of recommendation they would give?
Exactly. So they will basically, so what they will typically do is that they will ask you to share your entire profile with them, right? All things that you have done till now in your career, right? So they will go through that, they will review your profile, and then on basis of that, they will highlight in the LOR, according to them, what are some of the things that you have done till now and which might have had a solid impact in your industry, right? So that's the like kind of things that you can expect from someone who is a independent referee, like someone who doesn't know you, but then they are willing to refer you just solely on the basis of the work that you have done till now.
But I mean, in that case, if I'm working like with my employer, then they won't know until unless something I'm working on the front end, they won't know exactly. For example, if I'm in data science, I'm working within XYZ thing in my company, then that work, if I share with them, that doesn't get out in the public. So how would they show the impact?
So yeah, that's a good question, which basically means that if you have not done work that has not got out in the public, then it's not doable for you.
Understand.
You have to have done work at your company. So for example, when I talked with this person, they wanted to go through my publications, right?
Yeah.
Publications are official proof that, okay, this is the work I've done and it has been presented at some decent conference or whatever that is, right?
Understand.
So yeah, so your current work has to be published somewhere.
Understand. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So I think with that, we come to the end of the Q&A. I know there's a lot of questions coming in. Akash, really thank you for trying to answer all of them. I know there's a lot.
All are answered. So
Awesome.
just good. Yeah, while we were doing that.
Awesome. So I think then this is all we had to discuss. Really hoping that we are able to add some value to your understanding of the O1 visa and how to go about it. If you, I think just to end, I think the only thing that I'd like to highlight here is that if you really are interested, you need to believe that this is something that you can do. It's not like something like crazily impossible or anything like that. It's doable. Just that you have to have a solid plan of action. You need to approach in a strategic way. And, some of the other things that we talked about throughout the session, you need to take those into account. And if you are willing to spend, sufficient time and effort, I think you can definitely do it. And the other thing I would say is that if you have a lawyer figured out, try to bring the lawyer into the picture as early as you can, because again, the final petition is going to be made by your lawyer, right? It's not going to be like, depending on what I said today or what Akash said today or what some other people might tell you, right, about O1. So I think that it's very, very important that you are aligned with your lawyer from earlier time point. That way, that if I do this XYZ, my lawyer will be able to prepare for this evidence, right? Otherwise, it can happen that, you have a certain plan and you act according to that plan, only to find out at the end that your lawyer is expecting something else, right? Which is going to be a complete waste of time and energy. So I think it's really helpful if you can bring a lawyer into the picture as soon as you can. Be in touch with the lawyer, discuss with them that, look, this is my profile today. I want to apply for O1. These are the criteria. Now you tell me, if you want to build my petition, then what all do you need for each of these criteria, right? And then that becomes your target. That's what you have to achieve, right?
Yeah.
I think that's all I wanted to say before the end. Akash, you want to have add?
Yeah, having a good relationship with your lawyer is extremely important. I provided maybe 30 or 40 written pages based on my work, my field, evidence, impact, everything. It depends for everyone, but having strong collaboration with your lawyer is key. And I think last two things are just, you have to advocate for yourself for O1 within your company while asking for proof of work, because no law company will come proactive and tell, oh, let's do your O1. I think the first reason is because it's expensive compared to H1B, which is only $10. O1, like Rudra said, costs up to $7,000 or $10,000. So it's a huge factor. And yeah, in a large company, if they do it for one, they'll have to do it for many people. So you have to advocate for yourself strongly that, hey, this is what I have. It assumes that you are doing a good job at your company. Otherwise they'll be like, okay, thank you, we'll see you when we see you, your student visa. But yeah, you have to push for yourself and just believe that you can get it if it's that important to you. Otherwise, if you have that psychological barrier, then nothing can help you.
Yeah, I think that's a important point. So, like, you have to be your own advocate, right? That's what we say. I mean, yeah, nobody else is going to come and say that, okay, let's apply for a one visa for this candidate. You will have to make that point that, look, I am good enough, why you should apply for a one and help me stay with the company, right? In fact, not even you, I would say, your manager should say that to the immigration team, right? That this candidate is good enough, and at no cost can we have this candidate, go out from this company, right? So that's the level of trust or confidence that you should be able to build with your team. Awesome. So I think, yeah, we are at the end of the conversation today. So thank you everyone for joining the call. I will see if I can send out like something like a feedback form. I think that will be really helpful for both me and Akash to understand that, what went well, what are some of the things we might have done better, so that we can account for that during our next session. So I'll send out the, me or Akash, someone will send out the feedback form. And Akash, thank you for, spending the time here today. I know it's a weekend afternoon. But yeah, I think that's all we had. So thank you all, and we will chat later. Take care.
Yeah. Have a great rest of your weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, have a good weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Let me stop the recording.